strong billionaire divorces his ugly wife, but when she reappears as a beauty, his regret hits hard. In a world where fortunes are made and lost at the blink of an eye, love can be a far riskier venture than any multi-billion-dollar deal. Meet Leon Blackwood, a self-made billionaire who prides himself on taste, power, and possessions, until he marries Mia Thompson, a woman he deems beneath him because she's ugly. Tired of the embarrassment her appearance causes him among his high society friends, he files for divorce, never expecting that the very woman he discarded could return in a dazzling new form. Prepare to be riveted by a tale of heartbreak, secrets, and second chances in this enthralling, real-life romantic drama. Leon Blackwood was the kind of man whose name graced the covers of Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. At 33, he had reached stratospheric heights in real estate and technology investments. His name was whispered in the same breath as titans like Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, and Elon Musk. Yet, in the luxury penthouse he called home in New York's Upper East Side, Leon lived enveloped in a silent loneliness that even the world's finest wine or the priciest art pieces could not quell. From an early age, Leon had believed that ambition trumped everything else. Emotions were for the weak. He had built his empire through relentless work, shrewd deal-making, and an unbreakable will to succeed. Having grown up in a modest household, he vowed never to return to that life. After earning scholarships to prestigious institutions, he networked his way to the top, never shying away from bold risks or carefully orchestrated alliances. Enter Mia Thompson, the woman who would transform his life in ways he never could have predicted. Mia came from a small town in Illinois, a place that never appeared on tourist maps. Her father worked in a steel factory, and her mother spent her days caring for Mia's younger siblings and neighbors' children. Mia was unassuming, a kind, loyal soul who possessed a genuine smile. She had thick-rimmed glasses that hid her warm brown eyes, and she tended to wear plain clothes that prioritized comfort over fashion. By society's superficial standards, she was considered plain at best, although some in Leon's circle whispered more hurtful descriptors like dowdy or ugly. Their marriage was not a result of a fairy tale romance. Leon's father, Winston Blackwood, who had run a moderately successful trading company for decades, had business ties with Mia's family that stretched back years. Though Mia's family was nowhere near the Blackwood level of wealth, the Thompsons had once helped Winston out of a significant financial bind. Out of gratitude and old-fashioned tradition, Winston arranged the match. To keep his father happy and to solidify certain business transactions that hinged on the union, Leon reluctantly agreed. From the moment Leon laid eyes on Mia, he saw only a woman who did not fit his image of a perfect billionaire's wife. Where he expected polish and glamour, he got simplicity and timidity. Where he expected a socialite who could shine at galas and charity events, he got someone who preferred reading quietly in a corner. When they wed in a grand ceremony at a historic Manhattan church, the media was abuzz with gossip. Some claimed the marriage was a sham designed to fortify Leon's connections. Others speculated that Mia must have hidden qualities, perhaps an inheritance or a genius-level intellect. But Leon knew the real story. He did it out of duty, owing Winston a final favor. On their wedding night, as they stood in the vast bedroom suite of the famed Blackwood penthouse, the tension was palpable. Mia took tentative steps across the marble floor, uncertain of her place in Leon's life. He looked at her with a mixture of obligation and pity, wishing he could have found someone more fitting. But for all his grievances, Leon maintained an outward civility, at least in the beginning. Though he found her lacking in physical appeal, part of him admired her kindness. She was not a gold digger or a cunning social climber. In a world teeming with hidden agendas, Mia's sincerity was unique. She asked for nothing, neither designer clothes, nor diamonds, nor extravagant vacations. She simply tried to be a supportive wife. Yet Leon's heart was closed off. He was too consumed by appearances and fueled by the adrenaline rush of wealth building. He gave Mia cold courtesy instead of love. Despite her attempts at conversation, he rarely listened. When they attended high-profile events, he only introduced her perfunctorily before gliding off to mingle with influential figures. In the days leading up to their first official function as a married couple, he had even hired a renowned stylist to revamp Mia's look. But Mia felt uncomfortable with the severe transformations, preferring her soft curls to high-fashion updos, her modest dresses to body-hugging couture. Leon seethed at her stubbornness, taking her reluctance as an affront to his image. Deep down, Mia felt the chill of her husband's indifference. She tried to please him, learning about his business affairs, memorizing the names of all his potential investors, and even reading up on the art collections he displayed in his penthouse. But nothing seemed to pierce the protective shell around Leon's heart. Instead, her efforts only highlighted the yawning chasm between their worlds. Even as she felt the weight of disapproval and condescension, Mia put on a brave face. She found solace volunteering at a local children's hospital, reading stories to kids who were battling serious illnesses. Over time, these volunteer sessions became her lifeline. She poured all her unused love and tenderness into the children who needed it most. While Leon engaged in power lunches with venture capitalists, she was singing nursery rhymes to a 6-year-old recovering from surgery. Their worlds spun on separate axes, with only the marriage certificate binding them together. The stage was set, the tension was laid bare. Leon's pride had led him to an arranged marriage with a woman he deemed unworthy. Unbeknownst to him, the seeds of regret were being planted. For in a city pulsing with ambition and ruthlessness, love, when neglected, has a way of slipping through the cracks, and when it returns, it may do so in a form that leaves even the proudest billionaire astounded. A few months after their wedding, Leon found himself feeling increasingly resentful. In his eyes, nothing about Mia was suitable for his glamorous lifestyle. He dreaded the endless galas, charity dinners, and black-tie events where a billionaire was expected to make an appearance with a stunning spouse. Mia, however, seemed blissfully unaware of the rising tension. If she sensed Leon's dissatisfaction, she said nothing. Instead, she continued her routine of gentle volunteer work, quiet reading, and modest shopping trips, never once splurging on any of the luxurious things Leon's wealth could afford. Leon's distaste became evident to everyone around him, his staff, business partners, and even Winston. Sometimes, in the privacy of his study, Leon would rant to his personal assistant, Rachel Gaines, a sharp-eyed woman who had been with him for nearly a decade. Rachel would listen patiently, nodding her head as Leon paced back and forth, complaining that Mia's dowdiness was costing him in social capital. "It matters, Rachel. People like Elon Musk and Bill Gates have wives or partners who are either intellectually brilliant or polished to perfection. Mia is neither," Leon would fume. Rachel, loyal though she was, couldn't help but pity Mia. In her few encounters with the billionaire's wife, she found Mia charming in a quietly sincere way. Though she lacked the glamour Leon demanded, Mia had a heart of gold. But Rachel knew better than to contradict her boss. She simply offered a sympathetic ear, suggesting gentle strategies. Maybe hire a personal trainer for Mia, or introduce her to philanthropic societies that matched her caring nature. Yet every suggestion ended in a frustrated sigh from Leon, as if every remedy was futile. It wasn't long before the social circuit took notice. During a charity function at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where the likes of Anna Wintour and other luminaries were in attendance, Mia appeared in a simple black gown that she had worn to 3 other events. Whispers spread among the elegantly dressed crowd. Leon pretended not to notice, but inside he was seething. When Mia stumbled while meeting an influential developer, nearly spilling her champagne, Leon's face hardened like stone. Soon, the gossip spilled into the tabloids. Rumors circulated that Leon regretted his marriage. Speculative headlines like "Blackwood's unpolished gem" and "Is the billionaire headed for a divorce" started popping up in gossip columns. Leon's well-groomed circle of acquaintances, people like the real estate mogul Charles Harrington and the software tycoon Rachel Bezos, an allusion to well-known entrepreneurial dynasties, tried to dance around the subject, but their eyes said everything. Leon's marriage was an oddity, an uncomfortable secret everyone tiptoed around. Meanwhile, Mia tried her best to adapt. She took etiquette classes, tried on new outfits curated by stylists, and attempted to engage in small talk with Leon's associates, yet she never seemed to get it quite right. Leon's dissatisfaction grew with each of her failures. A small part of Mia began to sense something was deeply wrong. In the quiet hours of the night, she sometimes heard Leon in the study, talking to Rachel or drafting emails, his voice laced with frustration. She wondered if her presence was the cause of that frustration, but she dared not ask. She was too timid, too uncertain. One day, Winston invited Mia and Leon to a private luncheon at his country estate in Connecticut. Winston had always been a stern but fair man, and he held an unspoken affection for Mia's gentleness. Over tea and scones in the estate's grand drawing room, Winston turned to Mia, asking about her volunteer work. She responded with shy enthusiasm, describing the children she read to at the hospital. Leon listened in silence, his eyes flickering with impatience. Then Winston dropped the bombshell. He mentioned that he had spoken to Robert Friedman, an old friend who managed a large philanthropic foundation. Friedman was eager to meet Mia to discuss a potential partnership for a pediatric wing in a new hospital. Mia lit up, thankful for the opportunity to contribute something meaningful, an endeavor she could call her own. Leon, however, looked away, obviously disinterested. That evening, back in the penthouse, Mia tried to gauge Leon's support for her philanthropic aspirations. He offered a non-committal grunt, ignoring how her eyes sparkled at the idea. She tried to invite him to the foundation's next event, hoping they could show a united front. But Leon merely muttered that he had a more critical meeting with an international real estate consortium. As the weeks wore on, Mia threw herself deeper into charitable work, while Leon continued to frequent lavish soirees. They started living like two strangers sharing the same penthouse. Sometimes Leon would return home well past midnight, the faint scent of expensive cologne and imported whiskey lingering on his clothes. Mia lay in bed, clutching the sheets, her mind swirling with uncertainty and heartbreak. Little did Leon know that he was standing on the precipice of a decision that would define the rest of his life. The seeds of discontent had taken root, nurtured by arrogance and neglect. Mia was about to face her greatest pain, and Leon his greatest regret. For beneath her quiet demeanor lay a resilience that neither of them fully recognized yet, and soon fate would intervene, giving Mia an opportunity to rise from the ashes of this broken marriage in a way that no one saw coming. The tension between Leon and Mia reached a fever pitch during a black-tie charity gala held at the opulent Plaza Hotel in Manhattan. The event was hosted by a prestigious art foundation led by the renowned curator Sir Benjamin Arnold. The crème de la crème of society turned out, dressed in custom-made couture and dripping with diamonds. Leon, wearing a tailored Tom Ford suit, was in his element, shaking hands, exchanging business cards, and making deals under the guise of philanthropy. Mia, on the other hand, hovered at the edge of the room, wearing a tasteful but modest gown. She tried to join conversations, but she found little more than polite smiles and quick dismissals. To most, she was invisible, overshadowed by her husband's imposing presence and the socialites' calculated pretenses. Halfway through the evening, Leon introduced Mia to a real estate developer from Dubai. The developer extended his hand politely, but his eyes betrayed surprise and mild disinterest upon meeting Mia. Sensing the awkwardness, Mia attempted a cheerful remark about the breathtaking architecture in Dubai. She fumbled over her words, and the conversation died as quickly as it began. Leon's jaw tensed. The developer, sensing the discomfort, quickly excused himself to refresh his drink. No sooner had he walked away than Leon turned on Mia. In a hushed, angry whisper, he began criticizing her for her social mishaps. It was the first time he openly berated her in a public venue. Mia's cheeks burned with shame. She blinked rapidly, her eyes stinging with tears she refused to shed. "You never practice your conversation skills, do you? You can't even hold a simple dialogue about architecture," he hissed, leaning in close so that only she could hear him. Mia swallowed hard. She wanted to defend herself, to say that her interest in architecture was genuine, but how could she compete with well-traveled billionaires who had entire teams to brief them on talking points? Cracks in their marriage became painfully visible to anyone who cared to look. Winston, who was also in attendance, observed the tension with a heavy heart. Rachel, ever discreet, pretended not to notice, but quietly steered onlookers away from the scene. When they returned to the penthouse that night, the argument continued. Leon accused Mia of embarrassing him, while Mia tried to explain that she was doing her best. The spat was more heated than any they'd had before. Bitterness and resentment spilled freely. For the first time, Mia raised her voice, pointing out that she never asked for this life, never asked to be paraded like an accessory at these functions where she clearly didn't belong. Leon, fueled by pride and frustration, snapped back, "Well, maybe we both made a mistake. Maybe it's time to—" He stopped himself abruptly, but the implication hung in the air. Divorce. Mia froze. There it was, the unspoken threat. In her heart she had suspected it might come to this, but hearing it voiced, however tentatively, was like a dagger to her chest. Tears gathered in the corners of her eyes, and she fled to the guest bedroom, slamming the door behind her. From that night onward, the penthouse was filled with icy silence. Meals were eaten separately. Leon buried himself in work, returning later and later. Mia retreated into her volunteer activities, using any excuse to avoid facing her husband's cold disapproval. Behind Leon's arrogance, a flicker of doubt emerged. A small, dormant part of him felt guilty. Mia wasn't a monster. She was just a gentle soul who never aspired to the world of cutthroat business and glitzy soirees. Still, his pride made him cling to the notion that she was the one at fault, for not stepping up, for not learning fast enough, for not being the dazzling partner he craved. Meanwhile, Mia felt her self-esteem eroding. She had grown up believing that kindness and sincerity were enough to earn someone's respect. But in Leon's world, appearances mattered more than virtues. Unsure of how to bridge the gulf between them, Mia sensed that their fragile union was nearing its breaking point. And so they spiraled into another day of stilted pleasantries, awkward silences, and unspoken grievances. Neither realized that their fates were barreling toward a turning point. The cracks were widening. Soon, the marriage would shatter completely, giving way to events that would reconfigure their lives in ways they never imagined possible. Though their fights had escalated, Leon and Mia still tried to maintain the semblance of a united front for Winston's sake. Mia continued with her philanthropic engagements, even managing to secure a partnership with the Friedman Foundation to fund a new children's ward. She threw herself into this project, finding solace in the idea that her life could serve a greater good, even if her marriage felt like quicksand. Leon, on the other hand, focused on expanding his empire internationally. He traveled to London, Hong Kong and Sydney, negotiating mega deals that kept him away from the penthouse for weeks at a time. Whenever he did return, he found Mia either engrossed in spreadsheets for the foundation or preparing for community outreach events. It irked him that she could be so passionate about something other than him, or to be precise, about his world. In his mind, she was slipping further away from the role of Mrs. Blackwood, the polished socialite he believed he needed. The final straw came one sunny afternoon when Leon decided to invite a group of high-profile investors to the penthouse for a private meeting. He wanted to impress them with his refined tastes, fine art, exquisite wines, and the breathtaking view of Central Park from his terrace. Unbeknownst to him, Mia had scheduled a gathering for the Friedman Foundation on the same day. She invited donors, doctors, and a handful of families whose children were benefiting from the foundation's support. They were there to discuss upcoming fundraising galas and visit potential benefactors. Chaos erupted when Leon returned earlier than expected, walking into the penthouse with half a dozen men in sleek suits and polished loafers. They were greeted by a scene of kids running around the living room, knocking over decorative vases and scattering brochures across the floor. A volunteer nurse was explaining new therapy equipment to Mia and a few guests, all while ignoring the baffled stares of Leon and his investors. Leon's face reddened with anger. He had meticulously planned every detail of his meeting, from the vintage wine selection to the jazz playlist in the background. Now it was all in disarray. As he tried to usher his investors into a quieter corner, a small child raced past, nearly crashing into them. Mia, realizing the conflict of schedules, rushed over. Her cheeks were flushed. "Leon, I'm so sorry. I thought you wouldn't be back until evening. We're just finishing up." He glared at her, barely concealing his fury in front of his guests. "Clearly our home has turned into a playground," he muttered sarcastically. He nodded toward his investors. "Gentlemen, perhaps we should relocate to the rooftop lounge." Mia's heart pounded. She felt the judgment in the investors' eyes as they stepped over scattered toys and medical brochures. She hurriedly tried to gather the children and direct them to another area, but the damage was done. Leon's meticulously controlled image had been compromised. After Leon's meeting, which took place in the rooftop lounge, he stormed back into the penthouse. By then, Mia had managed to see off her own guests, apologizing profusely for the disruption. She expected a confrontation, but nothing could have prepared her for what came next. Leon tore into her with a torrent of words, accusations of sabotage, of undermining his business, of lacking any sense of his priorities. Mia tried to explain that it was merely a scheduling error, but he refused to listen. He blamed her for everything: the awkward investor meeting, the missed opportunities, and, most venomously, the embarrassment of having a wife who couldn't uphold billionaire standards. Standing there in tears, Mia realized that Leon no longer saw her as a partner, if he ever had. She was an inconvenience, a blemish on his spotless record of success. That was when Leon, in a cold, clipped tone, announced that he intended to file for divorce. He handed her legal papers, already prepared, bearing the Blackwood insignia. The air left Mia's lungs as though she had been punched. She looked at the documents, trembling hands clutching them tightly, and she understood that this was no empty threat. Leon had been planning this for some time, and now he was delivering the final blow. Shaking, she managed to speak. "Leon, is this really what you want?" He fixed her with an icy stare. "You've left me no choice," he said quietly, as though discussing a failed business acquisition. "We tried, but it's best we cut our losses now." And with those words, the final straw fell, crushing any hopes Mia had clung to. The marriage was effectively over. She felt a surge of sadness, relief, and a strange numbness all at once. Grasping the divorce papers, she retreated to the guest bedroom, the room she had come to think of as her refuge, leaving Leon alone in the vast penthouse he claimed to rule. In that moment, Mia could never have guessed that this painful end was merely the beginning of something that would alter both their lives irrevocably. For sometimes, the greatest journeys are born from the ashes of our darkest moments. The aftermath of Leon's divorce announcement hit Mia like a storm. For days, she stayed in the guest bedroom, barely eating and rarely sleeping. She cried until her eyes were red and swollen, haunted by the memories of every humiliating glance, every cold remark, every moment she felt unworthy in Leon's world. On the 5th day, she mustered the courage to pack her belongings and leave. She quietly arranged to move into a small, modest apartment on the outskirts of Manhattan. Through a friend at the Children's Hospital, she found a listing for a sublet that suited her needs, a place where she could lick her wounds in private. Without informing Leon, she left in the early morning, carrying just 2 suitcases and the few personal items she treasured. As she closed the door to the penthouse one last time, a wave of sadness washed over her. She felt like an exile from a life she never wanted but had tried so hard to make work. The first few weeks in her new apartment were difficult. She had to adjust to a life without servants, without the trappings of luxury. Yet she discovered an odd sense of relief in folding her own laundry and washing dishes by hand. She found the routine tasks oddly comforting, a stark contrast to the stifling extravagance of the penthouse. She spent her days working on the Friedman Foundation project, grateful that her involvement was not tied to her soon-to-be ex-husband's finances. One afternoon, as she was reorganizing files for a new pediatric ward fundraiser, she received a call from Winston Blackwood. Though she had expected Leon's father to blame her for the breakdown of the marriage, she was surprised to hear genuine concern in his voice. "Child, I'm sorry about how things turned out," Winston said gently. "I'm sure Leon is being... Well, Leon, he's not one to admit fault easily. If there's anything you need, financial support or otherwise, just let me know." Mia's throat tightened with emotion. Despite everything, Winston was extending an olive branch. But she knew she had to stand on her own 2 feet. She declined his offer politely, assuring him she was capable of managing. Winston respected her decision, sensing the quiet dignity that had once made him feel Mia was a good match for his son. That evening, Mia sat alone in her living room. She stared at her reflection in the dark window, seeing a sad, tired woman with tear-stained cheeks and disheveled hair. She whispered to herself, "How did I become this person?" In that moment she realized she had spent so long trying to please Leon, and, by extension, his world, that she had lost sight of herself. She decided then and there that she would use this painful experience to rebuild her identity, to become the woman she wanted to be. A plan began to form. She had read about image consultants and personal branding experts. They worked with high-profile clients, celebrities, politicians, CEOs, to craft appearances that resonated with their audiences. Could Mia apply the same principles to herself, not just for appearances but to ignite genuine self-improvement? She reached out to a friend, Sarah Mitchell, a publicist who had worked with some well-known non-profit organizations. Sarah introduced her to a team of specialists, a personal stylist, a fitness trainer, a speech coach, and a makeup artist. Together, they agreed to help Mia transform, not just in looks, but in confidence. At first, Mia felt uneasy about the idea of disguising herself, worrying she was turning into the superficial person Leon had wanted her to be. But Sarah assured her that this was about Mia becoming the best version of herself, not about pandering to anyone else's expectations. With the Friedman Foundation's upcoming gala only a few months away, Mia saw the perfect opportunity to unveil her transformation. She imagined walking into that event, not as Leon Blackwood's cast-off wife, but as a poised, self-assured woman dedicated to a cause. It wouldn't be about revenge, Mia told herself that repeatedly. It would be about closure, a final statement that she was more than the ugly wife Leon had dismissed. She also knew that her presence at major philanthropic events would inevitably intersect with Leon's social circles. Day by day, Mia threw herself into her transformation. Mornings were reserved for fitness training, a mix of cardio, strength exercises and yoga to improve her posture and overall health. Afternoons, she attended speech therapy and etiquette lessons, learning how to project her voice and articulate her thoughts with clarity and finesse. Evenings were spent experimenting with different fashion styles under the guidance of her personal stylist, Amber Davis, whose motto was, "Confidence is the best outfit, everything else is accessory." As she progressed, Mia felt a surge of renewed self-esteem. She was discovering muscles she never knew she had, experiencing the thrill of speaking without fear, and seeing her reflection transform from a timid woman to a radiant figure. Along the way, Sarah Mitchell helped her handle the media inquiries regarding the divorce, ensuring Mia's privacy was respected. Yet for all the forward momentum, Mia's heart still harbored scars. She couldn't forget Leon's cold gaze, his biting words. Sometimes, in the middle of practicing her speech, she would break down, recalling how much she'd sacrificed to be with him. But every time she felt weak, she reminded herself why she was doing this. for her own dignity, her own sense of worth. No one in Leon's circle knew what Mia was up to. She maintained a low profile, skipping all social events except those strictly related to her charity work. Leon, fully consumed by the divorce proceedings and his ambitious expansions, remained oblivious to her evolving life. He assumed she was simply nursing her wounds, somewhere far below his radar. In truth, Mia was laying the groundwork for a metamorphosis so dramatic that it would shake Leon's assumptions to their core. She had no way of knowing how he might react, or whether he would care at all. But for now, her focus was on herself. Step by step, day by day, Mia was carving out a path toward a future she could truly embrace. Weeks turned into months as Mia's transformation took shape. Early on, her personal stylist, Amber Davis, had laid out the ultimate goal, an appearance that was distinctly Mia, but polished in a way that accentuated her natural features. She began by addressing Mia's posture, teaching her how to walk with a graceful confidence, head high, shoulders back, each step measured. Meanwhile, her fitness trainer, Marcus Lowe, introduced an exercise regimen that wasn't just about losing weight, but about building strength and poise. Mia discovered that daily workouts were therapeutic, channeling her emotional turmoil into tangible progress. As she gained muscle and stamina, she felt lighter, both physically and emotionally. It wasn't long before she noticed her clothes fitting differently, her endurance increasing, and a newfound energy she hadn't known in years. Her speech coach, Dr. Olivia Chen, worked wonders on Mia's enunciation and vocal projection. Gone was the timid tremor in Mia's voice. She learned to articulate her ideas clearly, to hold eye contact in conversation, and to speak with a warmth that captured her inherent kindness without sacrificing confidence. The combination of better posture, improved fitness, and refined speech began to work its magic. Mia felt more secure in her skin, more aware of her strengths. Then came the aesthetics. Amber introduced Mia to a skincare routine designed to give her complexion a radiant glow. The difference was subtle, yet striking. Her face looked healthier, her eyes brighter. A professional haircut framed her features in a flattering style, and her thick-rimmed glasses were replaced with sleeker frames that complemented her face shape. Mia approached makeup cautiously, not wanting to appear too artificial. She learned how to enhance her natural beauty, soft eyeshadows that made her eyes sparkle, gentle contouring that highlighted her cheekbones, and lip colors that lent a vibrant but sophisticated touch. The transformation wasn't about hiding who she was. Rather, it was about revealing a side of her that had been buried under insecurities and years of neglect. One afternoon, Sarah Mitchell arranged a small photo shoot to document Mia's progress. When Mia saw the first set of pictures, she barely recognized herself. Yet it wasn't just the physical change that startled her, it was the confidence shining through her eyes. For the first time, she saw the woman she could become, a woman of quiet elegance and resolute strength. A woman who could command a room if she chose to. As she stepped onto the set for another photo, Sarah's phone buzzed. It was an email from the Friedman Foundation announcing the final guest list for the big charity gala. Sarah scanned the list and glanced at Mia, the corners of her mouth curling into a grin. Leon Blackwood had RSVP'd. Additionally, high-profile figures like Bill Gates and the Harrington family would be in attendance. Mia felt her stomach flip at the thought of crossing paths with Leon in this new form. But she steadied herself, recalling that she wasn't doing this just for him. She was doing it for herself, to stand proud in her achievements. In the weeks leading up to the gala, Mia honed every skill she had learned. She studied the Foundation's mission and key philanthropic talking points, prepared an articulate speech in case she was asked to address the crowd, and selected a gown that perfectly reflected her newfound poise, elegant yet understated, with just enough sparkle to make her feel special. During a final fitting for the dress, Amber stepped back and admired Mia in the mirror. It was a floor-length creation made of flowing silver fabric. The bodice was simple, yet refined, accentuating Mia's slender figure, while the skirt draped gracefully over her hips. A subtle slit revealed a hint of her toned legs. Mia's hair was swept into a low chignon, and she wore minimal jewelry, just diamond earrings and a matching bracelet for a touch of glamour. "You look magnificent," Amber breathed, her eyes shining with pride. "More importantly, you look like you." Mia gazed at her reflection, taking in every detail, her posture, her stance, her calm smile. She felt a strange mixture of excitement and trepidation. She knew her transformation would be jaw-dropping to those who had only ever seen her as the ugly, dowdy wife. But she was also determined that this outward metamorphosis reflect her internal growth. She was no longer the timid woman who cowered under Leon's disapproval. She had discovered a worth that shone independently of any man's validation. A part of her still wondered about Leon's reaction. Would he be surprised? Angry? Would he regret discarding her as though she were a flawed investment? Possibly, but Mia reminded herself of the bigger picture. Her mission was to help the Friedman Foundation raise money for children's health care, and that was where she would direct her energy. If she crossed paths with Leon, so be it. She was now equipped to face him, stronger, wiser, and undeniably radiant. With the gala just a week away, Mia finalized the details of her plan. She would arrive on her own, greet the trustees and major donors, and take her place as a proud representative of the cause. And if Leon Blackwood chose to speak with her, he would meet a woman transformed, a woman who had stepped out of his shadow and cast a light all her own. The night of the Friedman Foundation's gala arrived, and the atmosphere at the Waldorf Astoria was electric. The hotel's grand ballroom glowed with opulent chandeliers, reflecting off polished marble floors and floor-length mirrors. A string quartet played softly near the entrance as guests in gowns and tuxedos filed in, mingling and sipping champagne. Mia stood in the lobby, heart pounding. She had arrived by a discreet town car rather than a flashy limousine, determined not to make a spectacle for spectacle's sake. Still, from the moment she exited the car, she could feel eyes turning her way. Even before stepping inside, she recognized a shift. Men and women paused in conversation, glancing appreciatively at her silhouette framed by the glittering Manhattan skyline. Taking a deep breath, she walked into the ballroom. All around her, people she recognized from Leon's social circles were doing double takes. Some whispered among themselves, as if trying to place the familiar yet unfamiliar face. Others approached with cautious curiosity, layering on polite smiles. Among the early arrivals was Winston Blackwood. He caught sight of Mia near the ornate staircase and nearly dropped his champagne flute. He hurried over, genuinely astonished. "Mia?" he said, his voice hushed with awe. "My goodness, you look radiant." Mia's lips curved into a graceful smile. "Thank you, Winston. I'm glad you could be here tonight. The foundation has done incredible work, and I appreciate your support." Speechless for a moment, Winston gently took her hands in his. "I'm proud of you," he managed at last. "Truly." They chatted briefly about the foundation's initiatives before Winston excused himself to greet other donors. Mia wandered through the crowd, greeting people she knew, some who had once ignored her, now offering compliments and genuine curiosity about her transformation. She responded graciously, buoyed by the sense that she was finally recognized for her accomplishments, not just for whom she had married. When Mia reached the silent auction area, she spotted Sarah Mitchell, who gave her a conspiratorial wink. Sarah's smile said it all. Mia was the night's surprise star. As they exchanged hushed words about the event's progress, Mia caught a glimpse of a tall figure entering the ballroom. Her breath caught in her throat for just a second. Leon Blackwood had arrived. He stood at the entrance with Rachel Gaines, scanning the room with a look of detached poise. His gaze slid over the sea of glittering gowns and sharp tuxedos before landing on Mia. For a moment, confusion flickered across his features. He didn't recognize her. He turned away, chatting briefly with a pair of business moguls. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he looked at her again, longer this time. Mia kept her composure, heart racing. She watched as Leon's posture stiffened, realization dawning. She glimpsed a flicker of shock, perhaps even regret, in his usually controlled expression. Taking another steadying breath, she stepped toward him, bridging the distance. "Good evening, Leon," she greeted, her voice serene. He stared, struggling to find his words. Mia?" His voice was barely above a whisper. She extended her hand graciously. "It's been a while. How are you?" Leon hesitated before taking her hand. His grip was uncertain, almost tentative. "I'm surprised. You look—" He paused, searching for an appropriate word. "You look incredible." Mia's smile was polite but distant. "Thank you. I've been well, focusing on the Friedman Foundation's projects. They're doing crucial work for pediatric healthcare." Leon nodded, still trying to mask his shock. He cleared his throat, glancing around as if to make sure no one was eavesdropping. "Yes, I heard about your involvement. Seems you've done a lot since our separation." "You could say that," she replied, smoothing a hand over her gown. "I hope you enjoy the gala. It's a big night for the foundation." She gave a small nod of farewell and drifted away, leaving Leon visibly unsettled. From a short distance, Mia watched him attempt to regain his usual composure, but something in his demeanor seemed fractured. His eyes followed her across the room, almost as though he couldn't believe she was the same woman he had dismissed as unworthy. Throughout the evening, Mia circulated the room with grace and purpose, engaging donors, greeting old acquaintances, and charming new ones. She spoke passionately about the Children's Ward project, outlining how funds would be used to expand healthcare services for underprivileged families. More than once, she spotted Leon hovering in the background, observing her with an expression that blended admiration and disbelief. A hush spread through the ballroom when the Foundation's president took the stage to deliver a welcome address. Mia was called up next to present a segment on the charity's recent achievements. Stepping onto the stage, she faced the crowd with a calm smile, scanning faces until her gaze briefly caught Leon's. She detected something akin to remorse in his eyes, but she pressed on, delivering a concise, heartfelt speech that was met with thunderous applause. By the time she descended from the stage, Mia realized she had crossed an invisible threshold. The timid woman who once slunk through life in Leon's shadow was gone. In her place stood someone who had claimed her space and her voice. And in the center of the lavish ballroom, Leon Blackwood, the man who had once discarded her, now watched her every move as if she were the most remarkable person in the room. The night air outside the Waldorf Astoria was cool when Mia stepped onto the front terrace for a moment of solitude. The gala had been a resounding success. Millions pledged toward the Children's Ward, a record-breaking total for the Friedman Foundation's annual fundraiser. Mia felt the adrenaline still buzzing in her veins, a testament to how invested she had become in this cause. Lost in her thoughts, she almost jumped when she heard a familiar voice call her name. "Mia," Leon said softly, stepping out from the ballroom. He approached her slowly, as if fearful she might vanish into the night if he came too close. She turned, chin held high. "Leon, enjoying the evening?" He nodded, pausing before adding, "It's an impressive event, and your speech was remarkable. I never realized—" He trailed off, struggling to articulate the swirl of emotions on his face. Mia smiled faintly. "Never realized I was capable of standing on my own 2 feet." She let the words hang in the air. Leon's eyes flickered with regret. "I always saw you as timid, I suppose. I never gave you enough credit for your intelligence or drive. That was my mistake." She took a step away, placing a delicate hand on the terrace railing. She looked out at the glowing city lights, remembering the nights she spent in his penthouse, feeling invisible. "Yes, it was," she said, her voice steady. Silence settled between them, punctuated only by the distant hum of Manhattan traffic. Leon's gaze lingered on her. "I'm sorry, Mia," he finally said. "I should have supported you, or at least tried to understand you. Instead, I was so obsessed with appearances and my own ambitions that I neglected the fact you are a person with dreams and talents." Mia exhaled slowly, emotions swirling inside her. It was the apology she had longed for, but now that it had come, it felt both freeing and bittersweet. "I appreciate that," she managed. "But you can't change the past." Leon ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "I know, but if there's any way to—" His voice caught, and he swallowed hard. "If there's any way to make it up to you, I'd like to try." Mia turned to face him fully, meeting his eyes with calm resolve. She saw the man she had once feared and even resented, now looking strangely vulnerable. Part of her wanted to show him the compassion he had never given her, but another part of her remembered the countless nights of humiliation and tears. "You filed for divorce," she said gently. "There's no going back to what we had, even if we wanted to. And I'm not sure I'd want to go back. The woman you married, the one you dismissed, doesn't exist anymore." Leon's shoulders sagged under the weight of her words. He inhaled, as though summoning courage. "I know, but I see you now, really see you. I thought I wanted a polished trophy wife, but you're so much more than that. You're strong, passionate, and you have a heart bigger than anyone else I've known." He took another tentative step closer. "I'm not asking you to forget everything I've done. I'm only asking for a chance to show you I can change." For the first time, Mia saw the raw honesty in Leon's eyes. Could people change? Perhaps. But healing a wound as deep as theirs required more than words. She had built a life and identity outside of him, and she was not about to give them up on a whim. "I need time, Leon," she replied, her voice quiet but firm. "What you're seeing tonight is not an overnight transformation. It took months, maybe even years of growth and self-discovery. I'm not sure where you fit in that journey." His face fell, yet he nodded in understanding. "I deserve that. Maybe I can start by supporting your work with the Friedman Foundation. I can make a significant donation or help with connections." She considered his offer carefully. Part of her bristled at the suggestion. Was he trying to buy redemption with money? Yet she reminded herself that the cause was bigger than her personal grudge. "If your support is genuine, the children's ward can use all the help it can get," she said slowly. "But don't do it for me. Do it because you want to help." Leon seemed relieved she hadn't outright refused. "I will," he said. "And maybe we can talk again. Over coffee or dinner, away from the pressure and the crowds." Mia gave a small nod. "I'll think about it." He hesitated for a moment, as if contemplating a parting gesture, but he simply said, "Thank you," before turning and walking back into the ballroom, leaving Mia alone under the star-dappled sky. As she watched him go, a rush of conflicting emotions flooded her. She had craved his acknowledgement and apology for so long, yet it tasted different than she expected. She felt validated, but also wary. She was no longer in love with Leon, at least not in the way she once imagined. But neither was she entirely indifferent. Her transformation had changed her, reshaping her priorities and sense of self. Whether Leon genuinely regretted his actions, or merely the loss of what he could no longer possess, only time would tell. For now, she breathed in the crisp night air, relishing the moment as a victorious milestone in her journey. She had emerged from the ashes of a broken marriage with an identity forged by her own hand, and that was something no regret or apology could ever diminish. In the weeks that followed the gala, Mia returned to her routine of volunteer work and fundraising coordination, but a new twist complicated her life: Leon's renewed presence. True to his word, he approached the Friedman Foundation with a substantial donation, one that astonished the board of directors. They were quick to credit Mia for inspiring Leon's generosity. Although she blushed at the idea, Mia quietly appreciated that the children's ward would benefit greatly from his contribution. The donation brought Leon and Mia into the same orbit once again, albeit within the realm of philanthropy rather than high-stakes business or forced marital obligations. They attended follow-up meetings with hospital administrators, philanthropic advisors, and project managers. Mia often caught Leon studying her from across the boardroom, as if he were assessing how someone he had once underestimated could command so much respect. One afternoon, after a particularly productive meeting, Leon approached Mia in the corridor. "Could we grab a coffee sometime?" he asked, tone careful but hopeful. Mia hesitated, thinking back to his request at the gala. She had allowed herself a cooling-off period, wanting to ensure any meeting with him wouldn't stir up old resentments or unhealed wounds. Yet, she couldn't deny that curiosity tugged at her. People could change. She herself was living proof. Perhaps Leon was truly trying to evolve. "All right," she conceded, her voice measured. "There's a cafe near Central Park that's quiet and relaxing. Tomorrow at 10. A smile tugged at Leon's lips, the genuine kind she had seldom seen during their marriage. That would be perfect. The next morning, Mia arrived at the small cafe wearing a fitted trench coat and simple heels. She found Leon already seated, gazing at the bustling park through the large bay window. When he saw her, he stood up politely, another small change, as he'd once been indifferent to such courtesies. They exchanged pleasantries before ordering their drinks. The conversation began with updates on the Friedman Foundation, how the children's ward was shaping up, and various other philanthropic endeavors. The tension between them was palpable, but softened by a sense of shared purpose. Eventually, the topic of their past surfaced. Leon, stirring his cappuccino, met her eyes. "I still regret how I treated you," he said quietly. "Every day I think about it. You were always kind and I wasn't." Mia laced her fingers around her mug, letting his words settle. "I spent a long time blaming myself," she admitted. "I thought if I had just been prettier or wittier or more sophisticated, then maybe you would have cared about me." Leon's expression hardened in self-reproach. "That's exactly what I hate about what I did. I made you feel like you weren't enough, when in reality you were worth more than I ever deserved." She nodded, feeling an unexpected wave of empathy. People were multifaceted, and Leon was no exception. The man before her looked worn by remorse, a far cry from the arrogant billionaire who once refused to see her value. "It's going to take time," she said softly, "for me to trust your motives. I'm not looking for revenge or to lord this transformation over you, but I also can't pretend we can pick up where we left off." He took a measured breath. "I understand. Honestly, I'm not even sure I deserve another chance. But I do want to be a better man, if not for us, then at least for myself." They continued talking, and the conversation flowed more naturally than either expected. They discovered shared memories they hadn't appreciated before. The time Mia's volunteering had saved Leon from a PR crisis, or the small gestures of kindness he had overlooked in his hustle for success. It was as though they were finally seeing each other clearly, free from the distortion of expectations and social pressures. Their coffee date extended into an impromptu walk through Central Park. Under the canopy of turning leaves, they strolled side by side, exchanging stories of how their lives had changed. Mia spoke of her speech training, her new fitness regimen, and the sense of empowerment she'd found in charting her own path. Leon opened up about how the failure of their marriage had forced him to confront the emptiness in his life, and how therapy had helped him address the root of his need for external validation. As the morning turned to early afternoon, they reached the edge of the park. Mia paused, sensing the end of their meeting. She looked at Leon, who appeared both hopeful and guarded. "Thank you for today," he said. "I know it doesn't fix everything, but I'm grateful you gave me this time." Mia nodded. "It was nice. I don't know what comes next, but I guess we can figure that out as we go." They parted ways with a tentative understanding, a fragile bridge built on apologies and empathy. There was no grand declaration of renewed love, nor any promise of a second marriage. Instead, there was a cautious recognition that both had changed and that maybe, just maybe, they could find a new way forward. Whether as friends, collaborators in charity, or something more, only time would tell. Time. Over the following months, Mia and Leon found themselves intertwined in a series of events. Board meetings, hospital visits, and even casual lunches, always under the umbrella of philanthropic work. Their interactions were marked by a respectful distance, yet a burgeoning warmth suggested the possibility of reconciliation, or at least mutual respect. Mia's life continued to blossom. Word of her successful fundraising efforts spread, and she was invited to speak at conferences and seminars on charitable leadership. She embraced these opportunities, refining her public speaking skills and establishing a presence in philanthropic circles far beyond New York. She had long since learned that she didn't need Leon's approval or a Mrs. Blackwood title to contribute meaningfully to the world. Leon, for his part, was working quietly on himself. He scaled back some of his more aggressive business pursuits, taking time to explore personal interests he'd neglected, like painting and hiking. When he spoke about these newfound hobbies, Mia saw genuine enthusiasm in him, a side she'd rarely witnessed during their marriage. As Leon's and Mia's paths continued to cross, people around them began to speculate. Were they still divorcing? Would they reconcile? The tabloids tried to spin stories of a star-crossed romance, but Mia and Leon refused to feed the rumor mill. They maintained a cordial, if somewhat enigmatic relationship, neither confirming nor denying the gossip. One crisp autumn morning, Mia was at the children's ward, reading stories to a group of young patients. The new wing, largely funded by donations she and Leon had helped secure, was nearly complete. Bright murals adorned the walls, and the laughter of children echoed down the hallways. As Mia finished reading a story, she looked up to see Leon standing in the doorway, a quiet smile on his face. "Good morning," he said once she'd finished. "I was just dropping by to check on the progress." He pointed to the newly installed glass doors leading to the ward's outdoor garden, where children could soon enjoy fresh air and sunshine. Mia rose, setting aside the picture book. "Let me show you," she offered. They walked together, passing colorful rooms filled with advanced medical equipment. A sense of shared accomplishment hovered between them. Eventually they reached the garden. Leaves shimmered with the gold of autumn, and a delicate breeze rustled through the bushes. "This is beautiful," Leon remarked, admiring the view. He turned to Mia, his expression thoughtful. "I keep thinking about how this place, your work, has changed so many lives. It's humbling," she nodded, feeling a wave of gratitude that they could share this moment peacefully. "It's not just my work," she pointed out, meeting his eyes. "Your support helped make it happen." They lingered there, standing side by side. For a moment, neither spoke, letting the hum of city life and the laughter of children in the background fill the silence. Leon took a breath, bracing himself. "Mia, I want you to know that no matter what path you choose, whether you want to finalize the divorce or if you ever consider giving me another chance, I respect your decision." She looked at him, touched by his humility. A myriad of thoughts swirled through her mind. Their history was fraught with pain, yet it had led them to a place of newfound understanding. Could she trust him enough to consider a future together? Or was it better to move on, fully independent and unencumbered by the past? At last she spoke. "I've grown a lot since we separated, Leon. You have too. Whatever happens next, I want it to be based on who we are now, not who we were then." He smiled, a faint glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I'd like that." They stood in quiet companionship, watching as a group of young patients was guided into the garden by nurses. One child, a girl with a bright pink headscarf, waved eagerly at Mia. Mia and Leon both waved back, sharing a moment of joint compassion that spoke volumes more than any conversation could. In that instant, Mia realized that life had a funny way of weaving people's journeys together, even after they'd seemingly unraveled. Regardless of whether she and Leon would reconcile as a couple, they had already forged a bond deeper than mere romance. Their shared passion for helping others had drawn out the best in each of them, and perhaps that was the most meaningful connection of all. As they left the hospital wing, they walked side by side, talking about the final touches needed before the official opening ceremony. For the first time since the start of their tumultuous relationship, the future felt open-ended, yet brimming with hopeful possibilities. A new dawn was rising on their lives, one that promised not perfection, but a chance at something authentically worthwhile. Thank you for joining this riveting journey of heartbreak, transformation, and ultimately, hope. Mia Thompson's story reminds us that finding one's true worth often demands stepping away from what no longer serves us, and sometimes it can surprise the very people who once overlooked us. Leon Blackwood learned that success can be empty without compassion and empathy, and that real change begins when we confront our own flaws. Will Mia and Leon's renewed bond lead them back to each other as partners or merely as allies in doing good? Their future remains unwritten, leaving us all to ponder the power of forgiveness and the resilience of the human spirit. If you enjoyed this tale of dramatic twists and heartfelt triumphs, please like, share and subscribe to our channel for more inspirational stories that celebrate personal growth, redemption and the beauty of second chances. Your support helps our storytelling community flourish,